Once upon a time, in a small village nestled among rolling hills, there lived a young boy named Melova. He was a bright-eyed lad with a mop of unruly brown hair and a mischievous grin that seemed to dance across his face. Melova was known throughout the village for his quick wit and clever tongue. But beneath his charming exterior lay a troubling secret. You see, Melova had developed a terrible habit. He had begun to steal money. It started small, with a coin here and there from his mother's purse, but soon his greed grew like a weed in a summer garden. He would snatch coins from the baker's till when the kindly old man wasn't looking. He would pilfer pennies from the wishing well in the town square. Melova thought himself quite clever. He believed no one could catch him. With each successful theft, his confidence swelled. He began to dream of all the wonderful things he could buy with his ill-gotten gains. Sweets from the candy shop, toys from the market, and perhaps even a pony of his very own. But as Melova's pockets grew heavier with stolen coins, his heart grew lighter with the thrill of his misdeeds. He failed to see the worried looks his parents exchanged, or notice how the villagers began to whisper when he passed by. Melova was too caught up in his own cleverness to realize that his actions were casting a dark shadow over his once bright future. Melova's parents were not blind to their son's changing behavior. They noticed the extra sweets he always seemed to have, the new toys that appeared in his room as if by magic. At first, they hoped it was just a phase, a fleeting mischief that would pass like a summer storm. But as the days turned to weeks, their concern grew. One evening, as the family sat down to supper, Melova's father cleared his throat. "Son," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "where did you get that new spinning top I saw you playing with today?" Melova's heart began to race. He hadn't expected this question. His mind whirled like the very top in question, searching for an answer. "Oh, that," Melova replied, forcing a casual tone. "My friend Thomas gave it to me. He got 2 for his birthday and didn't need both." The lie slipped from his lips as easily as water over smooth stones. Melova's mother and father exchanged a look, their eyes filled with a mixture of worry and disappointment. They knew their son was not telling the truth. From that day forward, Melova's lies grew bigger and more elaborate. Each time his parents questioned him about a new possession or a suspicious absence, he would spin a tale more fantastic than the last. He told of generous strangers, lucky finds, and impossible coincidences. With each lie, Melova dug himself deeper into a pit of deceit, not realizing that soon he would be unable to climb out. In the heart of the forest that bordered Melova's village lived an enchantress named Srakaryma. She was as old as the ancient oaks and as wise as the whispering wind. Srakaryma had long watched over the village, using her magic to guide and protect its inhabitants. She had seen countless generations grow from babes to elders, and she knew the importance of honesty and integrity. One crisp autumn day, as leaves of gold and crimson danced on the breeze, Melova ventured into the forest. He had heard tales of a hidden treasure deep within the woods, and his greedy heart could not resist the temptation. As he pushed through the underbrush, his pockets jingling with stolen coins, he stumbled upon a clearing he had never seen before. In the center of the clearing stood Srakaryma. Her silver hair flowed like a river of moonlight, and her eyes held the depth of centuries. "Welcome, young Melova," she said, her voice like the rustling of leaves. Melova froze, startled by her presence and unnerved by the fact that she knew his name. "I have been watching you, child," Srakaryma continued, "and I am troubled by what I see." Melova's mind raced, searching for a lie to explain his presence in the forest, but before he could speak, Srakaryma raised her hand. "No more lies, Melova," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "Your heart has grown cold with greed and your tongue heavy with deceit. You must learn the value of honesty and humility, lest your soul be forever tarnished." With these words, Srakaryma began to weave a spell that would change Melova's life forever. As Srakaryma's spell took hold, a strange, tingling sensation spread through Melova's body. He watched in horror as his hands began to shrink and his skin took on a scaly texture. His legs fused together and his body elongated. In mere moments, where once stood a young boy, there now lay a small green snake. Melova tried to cry out, but all that escaped his new serpentine form was a soft hiss. Panic gripped him as he realized the full extent of his transformation. He writhed on the forest floor, desperately trying to make sense of his new body. The world looked different through his snake eyes, everything larger and more intimidating than before. Srakarema looked down at the transformed Melova with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "Young one," she said, her voice echoing through the clearing, "this is the consequence of your actions. You have twisted the truth so often that now your very form is twisted. But do not despair, for this curse is not eternal. There is hope for redemption." The enchantress knelt down, her eyes level with the serpent that was once Melova. "Listen carefully," she continued. "To break this curse, you must learn the value of honesty and humility. You must right the wrongs you have done and prove that you understand the harm your lies and thievery have caused. Only then will you regain your human form. Remember, Melova, the path to redemption is not easy, but it is always possible." Section 5. Life as a Serpent. Melova's first days as a snake were filled with fear and confusion. He slithered through the forest, struggling to navigate his new body. The ground felt strange against his scales, and the smells and sounds of the woods overwhelmed his heightened senses. He longed for the comfort of his home, for his parents' embrace, but he knew he could not return in this form. As the sun set and rose again, Melova began to adapt to his serpentine existence. He learned to move swiftly through the underbrush, to climb trees with ease, and to find shelter in hollow logs. But with each passing day, the weight of his loneliness grew heavier. The animals of the forest shunned him, sensing something unnatural about his presence. Melova's thoughts often turned to his past actions. He remembered the faces of those he had stolen from, the trust he had betrayed. For the first time, he truly understood the pain his dishonesty had caused. He thought of his parents and the worry they must be feeling at his disappearance. Guilt gnawed at him like a persistent hunger. As weeks turned to months, Melova's perspective began to change. He watched the forest animals, observing their simple, honest lives. He saw how they worked together, shared resources, and cared for one another. Slowly, he began to understand the value of community and trust. In the silence of his solitude, Melova started to contemplate the kind of person he wanted to be if he ever regained his human form. Section 6. Melova's journey of self-discovery. As the seasons changed, so did Melova. The harsh lessons of his curse began to sink in, reshaping his very nature. He spent long hours reflecting on his past actions, each memory a sharp reminder of the harm he had caused. The weight of his guilt was heavy, but it was also transformative. For the first time in his young life, Melova truly understood the consequences of his actions. In the quiet of the forest, Melova found an unexpected teacher in nature itself. He watched as ants worked tirelessly together, sharing their bounty for the good of the colony. He observed birds building nests, their dedication to their young unwavering. Even the trees seemed to whisper lessons of patience and perseverance as they stood tall against wind and rain. These observations sparked a change in Melova's heart. He began to see the beauty in honesty and the strength in humility. He realized that true happiness didn't come from material possessions or clever tricks, but from genuine connections and a clear conscience. The boy who had once reveled in deceit now yearned for the simplicity of truth. As his understanding grew, so did Melova's determination to make things right. He knew that breaking the curse wasn't just about regaining his human form, it was about becoming a better person. With this realization, Melova set out on a journey through the forest, determined to find a way to redeem himself and make amends for his past misdeeds. Section 7. Facing the consequences. Melova's journey led him back to the outskirts of his village. As he slithered along familiar paths, now seen from a new perspective, his heart raced with anticipation and fear. He knew he had to face those he had wronged, but in his current form, how could he make amends? The challenge seemed insurmountable, yet Melova pressed on, driven by his newfound commitment to honesty. His first stop was the village square. There, he found the wishing well from which he had stolen so many coins. As he approached, he saw children tossing in pennies, their faces bright with hope and innocence. Melova felt a pang of remorse, remembering how he had once crushed those hopes with his greed. In that moment, he made a silent vow to somehow repay every coin he had taken. Next, Melova made his way to the bakery. Through the window, he could see the old baker, his kind face lined with worry. Melova realized with a start that his thefts may have caused real hardship for the gentleman. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, heavier than ever before. He longed to apologize, to explain, to make things right. As night fell, Melova found himself outside his family's home. Through the window, he could see his parents sitting by the fire, their faces etched with grief. He realized with a jolt that they must believe him lost or worse. The pain of seeing their suffering, knowing he was the cause, was almost unbearable. Melova curled up in the shadows, his small serpent body racked with sobs that came out as soft hisses. Section 8. A Change of Heart. In the days that followed, Melova dedicated himself to finding ways to make amends, despite his limited capabilities as a snake. He began by returning to the wishing well each night. Using his tail, he would fish out coins that had been thrown in carelessly and were within reach. Then, with great effort, he would push these coins back into the water, ensuring they reached the bottom where they belonged. At the bakery, Melova found he could help in small ways. He kept watch for mice and other pests, chasing them away from the baker's stores. Though the old man never saw him, Melova felt a sense of satisfaction knowing he was protecting the baker's livelihood. It wasn't much, but it was a start in repaying the debt he owed. For his parents, Melova's task was more challenging. He couldn't reveal himself to them, knowing his appearance would only cause more distress. Instead, he took to leaving small gifts outside their door. Pretty pebbles, unusual leaves, and once a perfect robin's egg that had fallen from its nest. He hoped these tokens might bring a small measure of joy to their saddened hearts. As Melova continued these acts of kindness, he felt a warmth growing within him. Each selfless deed, no matter how small, filled him with a sense of purpose he had never known before. He began to understand that true happiness came not from taking, but from giving. The boy who had once thought only of himself was learning the joy of thinking of others first. Section 9. The Path to Redemption. As weeks turned into months, Melova's efforts to make amends began to have a noticeable impact on the village. The wishing well, once nearly empty, now brimmed with coins. Children's wishes seemed to come true more often, spreading joy throughout the community. The old baker found his storeroom mysteriously free of pests, his bread and pastries safe from tiny nibbling teeth. Melova's parents, though still grieving, found comfort in the small gifts that appeared on their doorstep. They began to see them as signs that their son, wherever he was thinking of them. This brought them a measure of peace in their sorrow. Unbeknownst to them, Melova watched from afar, his heart swelling with love for the parents he had once taken for granted. Word of these strange occurrences spread through the village. People began to speak of a guardian spirit watching over them. They left offerings of gratitude, bits of fruit, small trinkets, words of thanks whispered to the wind. Melova was humbled by their gratitude, knowing the truth behind these magical events. As Melova continued his secret good deeds, he felt himself changing. The desire for material things that had once consumed him now seemed trivial. He found joy in the happiness of others, satisfaction in honest work, and peace in knowing he was making a positive difference. The lessons of honesty and humility that Srakarema had spoken of were taking root in his heart, transforming him from the inside out. Section 10. Breaking the Curse. One crisp autumn morning, exactly a year after his transformation, Melova felt a strange tingling throughout his serpentine body. He made his way to the forest clearing where he had first encountered Srakarema. As he entered the familiar space, he found the enchantress waiting for him, her silver hair glowing in the early morning light. "Welcome, Melova," Srakarema said, her voice as gentle as a summer breeze. "I have been watching your journey. You have faced your wrongdoings with courage and have worked tirelessly to make amends. Tell me, what have you learned?" Melova, still in his snake form, looked up at the enchantress. He wished he could speak, to express all that had changed within him. As if reading his thoughts, Srakarema waved her hand and Melova felt his voice return. "I have learned so much," he said, his voice hoarse from disuse. "I understand now the pain my lies and thievery caused. I see the value of honesty, the strength in humility. I've learned that true happiness comes not from what we have, but from what we give." Srakarema smiled, her eyes twinkling with approval. "You have learned well, young Melova. Your heart has truly changed. It is time for you to return to your human form.